Okay, so today in the studio, it's a short day because I had bridge today, but I thought I would just show you my Tudor. This was a 24 scale Tudor in that I did, and I think I've done a video on this before if you wanted to check it out. But I just wanted to show you the four-poster bed that I made 24, so that's 24 scale. And so then I come and show you my 12 scale one. Now that I've finished it, well, I'm not finished it, but since I've got its structure, I think I've actually made it too big. And so I've just been looking at it thinking, can I live with it that size or not? And I mean, it would fit 4 people beautifully, but I think I will take it apart tomorrow and I'm going to cut it down to about that width. It's not going to be hard. I've just got to cut the end things down. And then it'll look totally different tomorrow, hopefully. I think I'll be happier with it if it was a little bit narrower. I can't understand how I went wrong, but that's just the way life is. I'm not very good with instructions sometimes. So I thought I'd show you how I sewed up the medieval braies, the men's undies. And they're very simple. There's a long oblong, and the only real thing is you've got to make sure that this, which is going to be the breech, which is around their waist, is going to be big enough to go over their bottoms. And then you leave a little gap in the side seam, well, it's going to be the front seam actually, and you make a placket. All right, now sew the legs, and this is going to be the legs. You stitch up a piece and you leave the waist, which is going to be that bit, free. I'll just put a pin in there, I think, or if I can, or mark that in some way. No, I can't, never mind. I'll stitch down from there. So you just do a quick little couple of seams. You can glue this, it's very easy to glue. I just prefer to stitch, but that's fine. And I'm using what was a pillowcase that had been washed hundreds of times and it got really soft and was falling apart, and I just taken the bits that are okay and didn't have holes in them, rescued it from the rag bag, and it's ideal for these medieval underwear for 12 scale because it's nice and light. So I'm taking it down to about there, finish that off. I don't know why I always pick these huge big needles. I think it's because they're easy to thread. And do the same on the other side. Just making sure I don't make it too small there. Now for women's underwear, they also used a very fine lawn, and they were often very simple shifts with shoulder straps, or they had a low neckline and long sleeves. And some of them had lots of, well, in the late sort of medieval period, they used up a lot of material. They used to have a lot of folds and a lot of pleats, and that became part of the dress itself. You saw the top of it, of the chemise, as being the top of the dress. So it's been quite interesting clothing over the Tudor period. Right, so that's the main bit of sewing for the legs. And so the easiest thing to do with this one is turn it inside out. Well, turn it so the right side's out. Got my little placket on the top. And put it through so you've got the two good sides meeting each other. Oh, it's got to be, it's a little tricky. You'd think it would be easier, but you just got to tuck it in there and just be careful you don't stitch all the bits that you shouldn't stitch together. So I've just tucked it in, concertinaed it in a bit. What I'm really wanting to do is stitch those seams together. Needle threaded. Now I've pushed the little breech thing into the leg. I've scrunched it up a little bit so I can get that top edge. This is actually the bottom of the breech, and I want to get the seam in the middle, and I'm going to stitch it so they've got the sides, right sides together. So I've had a look at the women's chemises, and they actually were oblongs as well. They obviously didn't do curved sleeves or anything like that. They had two oblong pieces for the front and the back, and then they had two more that went up the sides, and then they had two more oblongs that made the sleeves. So very simple construction. So I've got my finger in there so that I'm not going to be stitching too many layers by accident together. My husband says I've got to talk louder. When I start thinking, my voice drops. Luckily for me, it's fitting. Now what I did do with these before I started was I got a little bit of PVA glue on the paint, a toothpick or a skewer, and I ran it along the seams. I ran it along the edges so that they sort of did a fray check job on them. Getting a bit big with my stitches, never mind. Okay, last little bit. Okay. Now, I haven't hemmed anything. I've actually, because I sealed all the edges, they won't fray quite so much. I'm just going to turn it in the right way. So you've ended up with a kind of like a T intersection, but that's the legs. And what they did in medieval times is they often didn't even put a hem on the top, but the pattern that I was following on the internet, they actually rolled it over and made a hem and put a thread through that so that they could pull it together and tie it. But in medieval times, they used to just roll it down towards the waist and tie a bit of cord around their waist so that it all stayed in place. So they often had quite a big chunk of stuff up the top there by their waists. And then their legs came down, and then they had plenty of room for their bottom when they wanted to sit down. So that's better to have seen them on the little man. So that's basically how they ended up. And I've put a hem on the top and I've put a cord through it, so it tied it up. So there we go. I don't know if you ever want to make these for yourself. Some people get into medieval clothing, and I'm not into medieval clothing. I'm more into medieval cooking, and I've subjected my family to many medieval Christmas dinners. But I don't know if I could make myself. I don't think Roger would wear them actually either. So tomorrow I'll get back to the bed and I'll do the. I'll cut it down, make it smaller, and I'll do the bedding.